Stu Ungar is considered by many as one of the greatest poker players that ever lived. No other poker player could match Stu Ungar in terms of poker legacy and degeneracy. Here are 6 legendary poker stories from the life of Stu Ungar. Decades before online poker picked up pace, a 20-something man called the Kid was already making history out there. A gin rummy prodigy, Stu Ungar was 5 feet 5 inches tall with just about 100 pounds weight, so much so that nobody could have contemplated the rise of this kid as one of the most renowned names in gin rummy today. Stu Ungar wasn't viewed as a threat when he initially started playing since everybody took the kid lightly, but Ungar did not fail to cement his place of being the greatest rummy players of all time. When he was still a teenager, he was winning so many gin rummy tournaments that he had to search far and wide for a willing opponent. Harry Stein, regarded as one of the best players in America, heard rumors of this talkative, overconfident kid from New York City and came to meet Stu Ungar. Stein's goal was to teach a lesson to Ungar at first, but on his arrival, he looked at Stu, who had to place a crate on his chair as his height booster to sit and play comfortably. Stein gave a perplexed look and assumed the match would be over in a jiffy, and he was right. Stu Ungar won 86-0. Stein retired from the game of gin rummy after that day. Number 2. Despite being banned from playing blackjack anywhere in Las Vegas due to his card counting ability, one day, Ungar decided to head over to the casino owned by Bob Stupak to try and talk his way into playing. Stupak knew Ungar, and while he did not give in to his request to play blackjack, he offered him a bet. The wager was that one card at a time from a shuffle deck would be flipped over in front of Stu, and to win the bet, he simply had to know what the final remaining card was. Bob Stupak no doubt intended this to be a memory test, having heard about Ungar's abilities. As agreed, the cards were flipped over one after the other until just one remained. Stu Ungar said it's the 10 of diamonds and he won the wager. Stupak handed over $10,000 and became just another one in a long list of people who have lost thousands of dollars by underestimating Stu Ungar's brilliance. Mike Sexton, who was a close friend of Stu Ungar, had been watching as the bet was won and later inquired as to how he did it. Stu claimed that he had given every card a number in his head based on the suit and rank, then calculated the total value of all cards in the deck based on this system. He then added up the value of each card as it was flipped over, before subtracting the total number he reached after 51 cards from the total number given to the deck. The number he was left with allowed him to identify the last card based on the number assigned to this value. Ungar believed in mathematical brilliance, and that's what led him to glory. Number 3. Stu Ungar had a big chip lead in the main event in 1990. The field was down to 2 or 3 tables when play was paused for the night. Stu was tired and wanted to relax, so he went to his hotel to do some coke and tragically suffered an overdose. Ungar was rushed to the hospital. He survived, but did not make it back to the tables. As he had amassed such a big chip stack in the days before though, he managed to blind down to the money, coming 9th, cashing for $20,050. If he had won in 1990, Ungar would have gone on to become the only man in history to win 4 WSOP main event bracelets. Number 4. Stu Ungar was always looking for the next big thrill. He would bet on anything he can. At the poker table, Stu Ungar was a beast, but in golf, he was probably the biggest sucker that ever walked. Hall of Famer Jack Straus had convinced Stu Ungar that all of the action was on the golf course and that's where he needed to be. So Jack took Stewie to the golf course, explaining to him that before he could gamble at golf, he had to putt some balls and practice. Stu made a few quick putts and built his confidence, and the next thing you know, Jack and Stu started betting on who could putt the ball. The bet started from $500. And astonishingly, after an hour, Stu Ungar had lost $78,000 to Jack Straus. His friend Mike Sexton later pointed out that it must be the only time in history anyone has lost so much betting on golf within an hour of picking up the club. This story gives us a fascinating insight into the contrast between Stu Ungar as a poker player and a prop bettor, ruthless shark in one and hopeless whale in the other. Throughout his life, Stu Ungar is estimated to have lost comfortably 8 figures from bad habits outside of poker and was especially fond of placing bets on horses. Number 5. Sometime during the mid-90s, each year, Nolan Dalla began posting odds on who would win the World Series of Poker main event. A few gambling websites picked up the odds and began posting them for discussion. This was back only when about 300 people or so entered the $10,000 buy-in main event. And it was usually the same 300 people. so handicapping a field of well-known players with verifiable records wasn't too difficult. Most insiders generally agreed with who should be the favorites and the long shots. Some poker player would see Nolan's odds and became angry and would not talk to him. But no one was more furious about the WSOP odds than Stu Ungar. One year, while Nolan's WSOP odds were out, Mike Sexton and Nolan joined Stewie for dinner. Stewie had absolutely no knowledge of the internet, so he actually never saw the WSOP odds. When Mike Sexton brought up the odds during a conversation, Stewie was advised that he was listed at a 75-1 to win. Stewie wasn't too upset about that, at least not until he had heard the names of players who were ranked ahead of him. Stu kept on asking Nolan who he had ranked ahead of him. Nolan said players like TJ Cloutier, Huck Seed, and Johnny Chan were up there. And also, Barbara Enright was a 70-1 favorite. As soon as Stu heard Barbara's name, something snapped in his head. Stu was furious that Nolan ranked a woman ahead of him. There was particular emphasis on the word "a woman," almost as though the words were painful for him to say. At that point, Stewie stopped eating completely. Stu sat stoically in a state of disbelief, staring at no place in particular as though he had been told something impossible to fathom. Later in the evening, they did some other things following dinner and even talked a bit more. But every 20 minutes or so, Stewie would interrupt the conversation completely out of nowhere and mumble to himself while shaking his head as though he had been shamed beyond redemption. At number 6, despite having won an estimated $30 million in his career, Stu Ungar was penniless by the time of the 1997 WSOP main event. Having turned up at the Binions Casino in 1997, hoping for backers to pay his entry fee into the WSOP main event, Ungar initially got nothing except pitying looks from other players due to his bad habits and obvious poor state of health. Finally, he saw light at the end of the tunnel when his friend Billy Baxter decided to stake his buy-in for the main event. Stu Ungar actually got off to a shaky start. He had been up for 24 hours trying to raise the money, and his tiredness showed. Billy Baxter kept watch over him during the first day, making sure he was drinking coffee as Ungar had nearly fallen asleep at the table during the first day. But from day 2, Stu Ungar put on a powerhouse demonstration of poker strategy and reads that had rarely been bettered. At one stage on day 2, he was seated with 4 former world champions, Bobby Baldwin, Barry Johnston, Doyle Brunson, and Phil Hellmuth. But Ungar was the only one of these men to make it to the final table with a commanding chip stack that was double of his nearest competitor. Stu Ungar just kept on swinging until he was left heads up with more than 4 times John Strem's stack. The outcome was never really in doubt. John was knocked out within 6 hands. After the final card hit the felt and he had risen from his chair as champion, Ungar revealed in a post-match interview that he had promised his daughter he would win a title. He had been phoning her at the end of each day to tell his chip counts and had kept a picture of her in his pocket throughout the event. This looked like it could be the turning point in Stu Ungar's life he had so desperately needed. It was a classic rags to riches story, a beautiful moment. Ungar had gone from being homeless to becoming a millionaire overnight, but there would be no fairy tale ending. Ungar knew nothing else but to self-harm, and he blew the money away on drugs and gambling in less than 4 months. He declined to defend his title the following year, saying he felt too unwell and died a few months later in a cheap Las Vegas motel. They found just a few $100s in his pocket, which was all that remained of his prize money. Stu Ungar himself put it best when interviewed directly after the 1997 WSOP victory.
There's nobody that ever beat me playing cards. The only one that ever beat me was myself.
Nowadays his memory, unprecedented ability, style, and legacy lives on in remembrance of his amazing talent and energy which awed many. This video is powered by Bluff the Spot, the best place to learn how to win at poker from actual high-stake coaches like MMA Sherdog. Check the link in the description. And if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.